Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing really great. So this is my O.W.L's wrap up, aka my April reading wrap up, and I read 18 books in the month of April because your girl's crazy and I'm never doing that again because it was stressful. I could have enjoyed it more if I read less. There's a lesson for all of you. Sometimes less is more, even in reading. But I will talk about the books and I'll give super short reviews just because I have been doing vlogs, reading vlogs for all of you during the O.W.Ls. So that's up and I go much more into detail about all the books, and I will link all the reading vlogs and what books I read in all those if you're interested in any more details or if you just think it's fun. So for those of you who have seen those vlogs, this is probably not going to be so interesting, except that you get to enjoy time with me. First book I read was Fly on the Wall by E. Lockhart. This is about this girl who turns into a fly and she observes all these boys in the locker room. I thought this was so funny. I laughed out loud at several points. She refers to the guys' private parts as Genkis? Is that what Genkis? I don't know what that's called. Anyways, and she like talks about them in sort of like objective way, and it's really funny, and I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It's not like my new favorite book, but it's definitely like a super enjoyable light read if that's what you want. After that, I picked up V. Schwab's Shades of Magic. This is still Prince, Knight of Knives. That's a lot. I think I enjoyed this, but this as like a comic series, I'm not super invested in it, and I did like the fact that there's like a game aspect in this. That was fun, but all in all, I more enjoy the fact that we get a background story of one of the characters from The Darkest Shades of Magic rather than I actually enjoying this one. And I am curious to continue with the series though, but I'm not like over the moon about it. I think I gave it 3 stars. Then I read the graphic novel Fake Blood by Whitney Gardner. I actually ended up giving this 5 stars just because of how ridiculous it was, how funny. There's a reveal that's just so funny, and actually there is a Twilight reference in this. It's basically about this guy who's in love with a girl who's obsessed with vampires, and so he acts like he's a vampire so that she will like him. It's just really funny. It has a great message. It's almost like a parody in a way, and I'm so glad I picked on that up on that Twilight reference because that was really like the thing on top of the cake. Icing. Then the classic of the month was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and this was in itself actually a phenomenal book. It had a lot of great elements, and I loved a lot about it. It's about this young spoiled girl who loses her family in India where she lives, and so she has to move in with her uncle that lives on the moors in England, and she basically learns to become humble, and she finds this garden that really brings out the best in her. I loved so many things about this, how like the main character ended up not really being the main focus of the story. I loved the character development, how nice the characters were to each other and supportive. Was just really amazing to see actually. The reveal at the end was really fantastic, like the conclusion was just amazing, but all in all, like this is really not my type of story, and it's just like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of that like Jane Austen vibe without me having read or seen any of the movies, but just what I know of it. So it's just not my type of book, even though I think a lot of people would love this one. This is Spin by Robert Charles Wilson. This book is about the world losing all its stars one night, and about this main character and his 2 best friends who are siblings, twins actually, how they grow up with this stars losing from the sky and how they become involved with how the Earth actually tackles this situation. It is a sci-fi if you haven't already noticed. I ended up loving this book because it's so fun, it's so fast-paced, it jumps from the past and the present. It is super interesting, and I'm not going to talk more about the plot because all the little scientific discoveries that they make throughout this book is like a small victory in your reading journey, and I thought that was really fun. I loved the ending, I loved the romance. It was just a really great book. I think the downsides is how they tackle religion in this book. It really seems to me like the author doesn't like religion. I think environment-wise, it would be fun if there was like more talk about climate change, more talk about, I don't know. I think it's also fun because it was kind of related to what we're going through now in our world, but just highly recommend. I absolutely love this. It was like a new favorite sci-fi. Then I finished Tyrant's Throne by Sebastian de Castell. This is the 4th book in the Great Coats Quartet. There will probably be more books talking about these characters, but all in all, this is like one of my favorite fantasy series of all time now. It is so amazing because it's super fun. It's a light, fast, quick read, but the characters and the way they talk to each other and like the relationship is so deep, and more than anything, this book makes me cry so much, like ridiculous amount, and I've never experienced that with something that is so large in this spectrum of things that this book talks about and displays. I think this book was definitely not my favorite in the series, but I said in my reading vlog maybe that you can stop after the 3rd book, and I do recommend finishing it because this was a good read. I think I still gave it 4 stars. It's still really good. I love this series so much. It's like swashbuckling literature, so there's a lot of like dueling, and the author actually knows how to duel and he's really good at it, so the fighting scenes are just amazing, so immersive, so real, like you can just see everything that happens in this book in front of your eyes while reading. I read so many good books this month, also so many bad, but that's what happens when you read a lot of books. The next one is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and O.W.L Mohatar. So this book was phenomenal. First off, it's so weird. You're gonna be so confused at like the first half of the book, but once you take that confusion, stuff it in a box, and just enjoy the story, things are going to change. This book is about these 2 agents who work on opposite sides of this thing called the Time War. They're trying to win it, and they travel back in time to kind of create this butterfly effect that is going to spiral and change something long in the future. And it was just really interesting to see these 2 sides. Basically, red is for more like the technological side and blue is more for the nature side, but they develop a correspondence and they kind of develop this friendship, and it's so beautiful. This is definitely like a hard sci-fi in the way that the world has developed to, but the sci-fi, oddly enough, is not the focus of the story. It's about the relationship between the 2 characters, and the ending, beautiful, so amazing. I love it. I'm definitely gonna read this like many times. Also, the writing is super beautiful. Like, it's insanely beautiful. Next, I put a little band in the middle of all these books to remind me to talk about The Memory Police, which I listened on audiobook. I don't remember the author's name. I'll put it here while I talk. This book is about this little island where things start to disappear, and they don't physically disappear, but their memory of the thing disappears. So they basically get rid of a thing once it disappears. So for example, all forks disappear. It doesn't happen in this story, but just as an example, all forks disappear, and then you just have to get rid of all the forks, because like, what's the point of having a thing that you don't remember what is? It's super odd, and it's actually way more about the characters and the romance and the story. I personally thought that it was very underwhelming because of the concept I have read before, and I wish it was more unique. I wish it was making me feel more things, but it's just a very depressing, sort of starts at a bad point in the story, it just goes downhill, and then the book ends and you're like, why did I read that? So I personally didn't like it. I think I gave it 2 stars. Then I read Waves by Ingrid Schubert and Carol Morel. I think Ingrid is the author and Carol? Would you say Carol or Carol? Anyways, this is only an 80-page graphic novel, but it was beautiful and it made me cry, which is fantastic. This is about Ingrid having this experience. It's a kind of a memoir in a way, where she and her girlfriend slash wife, I'm not sure, have been trying to have kids. This is kind of a short illustration of the struggle that came with that and the sorrow of the loss. So it's definitely a super sad book, but it's also very touching, and the ending is super hopeful. The art is really amazing. I absolutely adored it. When they were going through a hard time, it was black and white, and when they were going through better times, there are colors. And the main character that you're following, who is pregnant, she kind of has these visions of what she thinks her life is, and that's when the ocean element comes in to the play, and it's not real, but it's how she visualizes her feelings, and I thought that element of it was super interesting. I don't know if you would think this is worth like the money because it's so short and quick and brief, and it's very like this happened, it's not so detailed and conversation based, but it was just really short and beautiful and important, definitely important. Thank you for whoever recommended that book to me. I am so happy. Then I read The Arithmetist by Brandon Sanderson. This is his middle grade book, I believe, which is kind of weird because the main character is like 16. This is about kind of a fantasy world, but it looks like the US. I'm going to show you for a second. It's like a futuristic look. This is the United Isles, I think, and it looks like the US, but they're all divided into islands. So I'm really curious to see why that is because we don't get a whole lot of explanation of that throughout this book. It is so fun. If you want like a fun, exciting mystery / fantasy magic read, pick this up. The main character is super inspiring, and he doesn't have this arithmetist magic, but he wants it really bad and he knows everything there is to know about it. It kind of is about this world where people can draw with chalk different kind of setups to battle each other, and not every chapter, but like every second chapter shows you different types of defenses, that different circles you can draw to like achieve different types of defenses and the purpose of the different type of defenses. So the magic system is so fun because it's basically like a game, but with magic, the way they fight each other. I really love this. There's like 2 villains that kind of reveal at the end, and one of them I definitely predicted, which was fun. I do recommend this, but as I said before, I'm not a fan of middle grade. Even with Brandon Sanderson, like how is that possible? So I gave it 4 stars, but a super fun read. Then we have Marceline Gone Adrift. This is a Adventure Time comic. Basically, Marceline accidentally gets shot into space and Bubblegum tries to retrieve her. It was really fun. I think it's like a 4-star. It was definitely not like my favorite Adventure Time comic, but I did really enjoy how there was one consistent story throughout, because otherwise the Adventure Time comics are divided into many short stories, but this was just one big one, which was fun. There was definitely a lot of candy, what do you call it, Easter eggs in this, and references to Adventure Time, which the other ones don't have as much, and that was great. Sheets by Brenna Thumler. I think I might have given this 5 stars because I think a lot of people, when they think about graphic novels, they rate the story as a whole, but a graphic novel is at least half the artwork, and this artwork is like absolutely phenomenal. The colors are great, and the detail is like extreme, and I can't even imagine how much time this would have taken. So I think the art is just amazing. Also check out this author's Instagram. It's so beautiful. So this story is about this girl and her father and her brother who have lost their mother, and she has left them with this house, and they have to take care of this laundromat, but she's really struggling. The main character, she's so sad all the time. It's such a depressing story, and I feel like no one really talks about that because there's also about this cute ghost, you know? I don't really want to talk more about the story of that because things go quite slowly, but in a very cool way. Story is more like a 3-star because things happen very quickly at the end, and the build-up is quite slow. I wish it would have been more, watered out, so it's like evenly spread out the speed. But I do really recommend this as a graphic novel because it's just a great experience as a whole. Oh man, I'm so tired. Okay, let's go. The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. This is the first one in the chronological order of Narnia Chronicles. Wow, I got through that really great. This, I actually really ended up liking it. I gave it 3 stars just because it's also really not my type of fantasy. It's classified as Christian fantasy, and I'm not a Christian, but I do see why it is. I think there's probably more references to Christianity than I realized because I haven't read like the whole Bible. But Aslan refers to, you know, the main characters as like child of Adam, child of Eve, so that's like a big one that I picked up on. But this is kind of the origin story of the Witch, the Lion, the Wardrobe, and how they came into the world of Narnia, and that was really fun to see, and I'm super excited to pick up the next books. But like I said, it's not really my type of book, so 3 stars. Then I read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is about this guy who, his mother and him, they go to a museum. There's a bombing at the museum and his mother dies. And when he leaves the museum trying to get out of there in a complete like shock, he takes with him his mother's favorite painting. He steals it from the museum, and the whole book is about how this basically haunts him throughout his entire life. It is so dark, so unrewarding. It doesn't really get better by the end. He ends up having a lot of drug addictions. There are complicated friendships represented in this book. I think a lot of people would compare it to A Little Life because it is so tragic, but A Little Life is amazing. This is not. I mean, I gave it 3 stars, so it's not like a complete waste of time, but it was just like a whole lot of reading for like a less amount of result in satisfaction. Like, it wasn't really worth it. I don't know. Definitely there's parts that explain as beautiful. The beginning was really hard because I love my mother more than anything, and the ending, the author explained everything that the book was about, so it was kind of like defeating the whole purpose of this 800-page book because she was explaining, this is what this means, this is what I realized throughout my life, and it's kind of like, it just seems to me that she could have woven it on all those things like throughout the book, because that kind of like defeats the purpose of all of these pages. If you're just gonna tell me what it was about at the end, then it's like, it was really frustrating. Also because it's like so much time. There was definitely some good quotes that I highlighted, but not a big fan, to be honest. Then I read the Threads of Fortune. I kind of read this throughout the whole month because it took me so long. This is the 2nd volume in the, what is it called, the series? The Black Tides of Heaven is the first one, and this is the 2nd book in the series. It is a very short fantasy, and I think what the problem I had with this book, I ended up giving it 3 stars because like I really respect what the author does and the way they tackle like gender, relationships, and the creature of this world is interesting, the magic is interesting, and it's so sad because it's literally just too short, and I wish the author would elaborate on like so many things that are happening in this, which makes me so sad because I see how much I could love this book if just like a tiny bit more time was spent on the different things, because it is just really great and the author writes really great, and it's just too little, and that to me like completely ruins it because I don't get to enjoy and have time to spend with the characters and the world and the magic. It's just rushed past, and then I'm not as invested, which is sad. So I ended up giving this 3 or 2 stars, I think. Okay, we only have 3 books to go, guys. This is Between the Acts by Virginia Woolf. This is the 2nd classic I read this month. This is her last book, and she never really got to edit this book before it was published because she died. So I don't know if I have similar problems with her other books, but this was just like really not my style of book. It all takes place over one day where this little town, village, are gonna have a pageant and you follow all these characters and kind of the drama that goes in between them, how they're all related, and their relationship to this play that's taking place. I have to admit, this was difficult for me to get through. I just didn't like it, not my thing. I feel like there was a lot of underlying messages, probably because it takes place during the war, I think, and it could have been a lot of different messages in here, but I was not invested in it, completely went over my head. And there is about 15 pages of this consists of the actual play being written out in play format, and I don't enjoy reading plays personally. I gave it a shot, I realized I really won't enjoy the play parts, and I skipped them. Some of you are gonna hate me. I probably am not the perfect person to listen to of reviewing this book. I bet there's people that love this book. It was just not my thing, to be honest, so I give it 1 star. After that, I finished Minecraft The Crash. This is the 2nd book in the Minecraft novel companion novels. I wasn't a fan of this. It's so weird because... Why? That noise though. I wasn't a fan of this because it was all kind of like a love letter to Minecraft, and as someone who hasn't played Minecraft, I didn't really enjoy that element. Everything was great, like all the elements were there in this book, it was just not well executed. It's about this girl called Bianca. Also, Bianca doesn't fit the main character, and I didn't like any of the names that they gave the characters in the books, and I don't think it fit their person, which is a weird critique to have because I've never experienced that before. But it's about Bianca, who is in a car crash together with her boyfriend, and he dies, she doesn't, and she's very close to death, and so she's in the hospital for a long time, and to escape her reality and the fact that her boyfriend is dead, which she doesn't face throughout this whole book, she basically plays this virtual game of Minecraft. I really wish there was more sci-fi element because it's quite clear from the beginning that this is taking place long in the future, but they don't really explain any technological stuff, and it's completely dumbed down for being about a 13-year-old. Like, I'm not sure if it is a young adult or if it's a middle grade, but either way, it's really dumbed down, which is something I just can't like grapple my mind around. Adding to that, the language is so simple, it's so bland, it doesn't have any characteristic or personality whatsoever, which is also frustrating to read because I really don't know the author. I feel like I don't know the characters that well. There was also a lot of bickering in this book. It was just not an enjoyable read, and I gave it 1 star as well. Lastly, but definitely not least, because your girl spent 10 years on this book. Wouldn't surprise me. 10 days on this book. This is the 6th book in the Wheel of Time, called Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. This was one of my least favorite books in the series. There was definitely a moment that was really fun because it was like a plot twist type of thing, and Robert Jordan, he does endings and plot twists perfectly, and they're very enjoyable, but the rest of the book is just like so much blah 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 and it's so boring, man. I don't know if I love this series or hate this series. Like, I just can't identify my feelings with it. There's so many interesting things, but it's also so boring to read. I'm definitely gonna continue because I have set that goal for myself, and there are moments that make it worth it. But just in general, I feel like too many characters, especially in this one. I stopped taking notes of the side characters because I just don't feel like it was important anymore. And another fact is that the first 70 pages is just prologue, so boring. And in this one in particular, I really noticed it because we've been spending so much time in... What is this world called? Whoa, your girl doesn't know the name of the world. I feel like it's called like the Westlands or something. Like, it's... Anyways, what was I gonna say? Right, because we spend so much time in this world now, Robert Jordan needs to stop repeating things. Like, he is constantly bringing up stuff that we're supposed to know. Like, he keeps explaining about, this is how this culture works, this is how this stuff works, but we already know that. And I understand that, like, these were written many years apart compared to how I'm reading them now, which is every month. But he doesn't repeat, for example, who certain characters are as much, which is harder to remember, first off, but he does repeat these like super basic principles that we all know, and he keeps repeating stuff that like are more memorable than others, and I just don't understand how he prioritized what to recap and not. Like, this just needs to be like heavily edited. And that is it for this video. Also, because it was the Owls, I want to give you guys who are interested in an overview of the books that I read for the Owls, the Reading Rush, which was also hosted for 4 days, which was fun. Thank you, Ariel and Raylene. And which ones I read just for fun. The books that I read just for fun was Between the Acts, The Rhythmatist, Fake Blood, Marceline Gone Adrift, Sheets, and The Red Threads of Fortune. Then these books are the ones that I read for the Owls, and I'll recap that too. This Magician's Nephew I read for Divination, Fly on the Wall, Transfiguration, Spin, Astronomy, The Secret Garden, Arithmancy, This Is How We Lose the Time War, Care of Magical Creatures, Waves is Defense Against the Dark Arts, Lord of Chaos, History of Magic, Tyrant's Throne, Charms, Minecraft is Herbology, The Steel Prince Volume 2 is Potions, and lastly, The Goldfinch is Muggle Studies. And so that means I completed 11 Owls, and I started to become a Hogwarts professor teaching Care of Magical Creatures, which is what I accomplished. And also, funnily, weirdly, the book, How We Lose the Time War, which I read for Care of Magical Creatures, which I'm gonna teach, is my favorite book of the month. Weird, right? It confirms that I'm on the right path in life. I hope you guys enjoyed this. How your Owls went, comment below. How many Owls did you complete? What profession were you studying for? Did you achieve that? Are you gonna participate in the n.e.w.t? Otherwise, just comment some books that you read this month. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to talk about books with you guys soon again. Bye!